In a world overflowing with noise, opinions, and endless streams of words, silence becomes one of the rarest and most misunderstood forms of communication. Yet, silence is not emptiness. It is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. The mind that has learned to be silent has reached a state of clarity beyond thought, beyond conflict, beyond the need to prove or defend. Silence is the ground from which true wisdom grows, because it is only in the absence of noise that one can begin to truly hear. Not just hear the outer world, but the inner one, the whisper of intuition, the rhythm of one's breath, the subtle energy that connects all things. When one speaks constantly, the voice of wisdom remains drowned. The ego speaks through sound, but the soul speaks through silence. To sit in stillness is not to withdraw from life, it is to enter into its depth. Most people fear silence because it reveals what noise hides, the truth of our inner state. In silence, the mind loses its distractions and turns inward. It faces itself. And what it finds there can be uncomfortable, unresolved emotions, suppressed fears, the weight of desire, the echo of loneliness. But within that discomfort lies the key to transformation. For only by observing what arises in silence without escaping it can one begin to dissolve it. The sages of old did not seek knowledge through words alone. They observed, they listened, they became one with the stillness around them. Wisdom is not gathered through argument, nor built through accumulation. It is uncovered when the unnecessary layers of thought fall away. Silence teaches not through explanation, but through revelation. The quiet mind perceives without distortion. It sees reality as it is, not as it is imagined to be. When one reaches this level of awareness, decisions are made not from confusion, but from clarity. Actions flow naturally without resistance, because they are aligned with the rhythm of the universe. True silence is not about muting the outer world, but quieting the inner turbulence. You may sit in a forest, yet if the mind is restless, you are surrounded by noise. You may sit in the middle of a crowd, yet if the mind is still, you are in perfect silence. Silence is an internal state of being, not the absence of sound, but the absence of conflict. It is a space where the mind stops reacting and starts observing. When this happens, perception deepens, and even the smallest detail becomes luminous. The sound of a leaf falling, the breath entering the lungs, the pulse beneath the skin, all of it reveals the mystery of existence. When a person learns to move from silence, they begin to act from a place of awareness instead of impulse. Words spoken from silence carry power. They do not scatter energy but direct it. Most conversations in this world are echoes of noise meeting noise, reactions, defenses, performances. But when a silent mind speaks, its words have weight. They do not aim to impress but to express truth. Silence refines speech. It removes the unnecessary, the excessive, the false. It teaches restraint, patience, and precision. Through silence, one learns that not everything needs to be said, and that what truly matters can often be conveyed without a single word. The wise do not chase the crowd, they watch it. They do not rush to respond, they listen. Their silence is not weakness but mastery. For only the one who can remain still amidst chaos has gained control over their own energy. The world constantly pulls the mind outward, toward distraction, toward judgment, toward endless consumption of information. But silence draws the mind inward, toward reflection, toward presence, toward essence. It reminds us that truth is not something to be acquired, but something to be remembered. The human mind constantly seeks validation through speech. It wants to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. But silence asks for none of these. It rests in its own completeness. When the mind quiets, it realizes that it does not need to convince anyone of anything. It simply is, and in that state of being, understanding dawns naturally. This is the wisdom that does not come from books, teachers, or philosophies, but from direct experience. Silence allows consciousness to meet itself without interference. In the stillness between thoughts, one begins to perceive the vast space that holds all things together. This space is not bound by language, belief, or perception. It is pure awareness. It has no bias, no story, no identity. It simply observes. The more one dwells in this space, the more the grip of the ego weakens. The need to prove oneself fades. The fear of being misunderstood dissolves. In silence, the self that is constantly performing disappears, leaving behind the essence that is beyond name and form. Every great realization in history has emerged from silence. The greatest minds withdrew not to escape but to understand. When the noise of the world fades, the whispers of the infinite become audible. Creativity, insight, and intuition are born from this state. The most profound ideas arise not in moments of chaos, but in the quiet intervals of reflection. Silence nurtures vision. It is the soil from which inspiration grows. Silence also heals. When the heart is wounded, words rarely mend it. Time spent in stillness allows energy to settle, emotions to stabilize, and clarity to return. The more one embraces silence, the more one becomes aware of the patterns that govern thought and emotion. The restless mind begins to slow, and in that slowing, peace emerges naturally. Silence brings balance to a life consumed by noise. It reminds us that wisdom is not about knowing more, but about understanding deeper. To cultivate silence is to cultivate strength. The mind that can remain calm amidst storms is the mind that has mastered itself. Silence is not a void, it is a vessel. It holds everything, yet remains untouched. It is the highest form of wisdom because it reflects truth without distortion, and in its presence, everything false eventually fades away. There is a simple truth that governs every human experience, a principle that ancient teachers have always understood. Energy flows where attention goes. Wherever the mind lingers, the body follows, and the heart begins to vibrate in the same frequency. What you feed with your awareness grows stronger, and what you neglect fades away. This truth is not only spiritual, it is deeply practical, shaping the quality of your life, your relationships, and your sense of inner peace. Every thought, every focus, every quiet moment of reflection is an act of creation, directing unseen forces toward manifestation. When the mind is scattered, energy becomes diffused. You can see this in people who try to do many things at once, who want to grow but are caught in the constant noise of distraction. Their actions lack depth, and their spirit feels divided. Like sunlight passing through fog, their power is spread too thin to create heat. But when attention becomes still, when awareness is unified toward a single purpose, the same light becomes a laser, sharp enough to cut through confusion, strong enough to bring change. This is why focus is not just a mental skill, it is a spiritual discipline. It determines what kind of life you build and how much power you carry within you. Energy responds to focus. If your attention constantly drifts toward fear, anger, or resentment, your life will begin to reflect those emotions. You will attract situations that confirm those vibrations because the universe simply mirrors the energy you project. But when your attention turns toward gratitude, peace, and compassion, a different current begins to move through you. The energy that once felt heavy starts to lift, and life begins to open. The outer world shifts not because the world itself has changed, but because the observer has changed. To master your energy, you must first master your attention. The mind is like a river. It wants to move, to explore, to flow endlessly. But without awareness, it floods and destroys. With awareness, it nourishes and gives life. Training your attention means becoming the watcher of your own thoughts, not their prisoner. It means learning to direct your consciousness consciously. Most people allow their attention to be hijacked by emotions, by social media, by worries that exist only in imagination. In doing so, they give their power away. Every moment you spend dwelling on the unnecessary is a moment your energy is drained from what truly matters. When you bring attention back to the present moment, something subtle but powerful happens. Energy begins to gather. Your mind feels lighter, your actions become intentional, and your inner voice grows clearer. The breath deepens and awareness expands. You begin to experience the unity between body, mind, and energy. This is not about suppressing thoughts or forcing focus. It is about remembering where your true home is, the now. The present moment is the gateway through which energy flows most freely, unblocked by regret or anticipation. In every spiritual tradition, this principle is echoed. Monks focus their minds through meditation. Athletes channel their energy through concentration. Artists lose themselves in their creation. The secret behind their mastery is the same. They know where to place their attention. They understand that energy amplifies whatever it touches. A distracted artist creates confusion in their work. A focused one creates beauty that moves souls. A scattered life produces anxiety. A focused life produces clarity. Attention is not only about focus, it is also about choice. You are always choosing what to energize with your awareness. When you dwell on pain, you keep it alive. When you feed thoughts of limitation, they grow roots in your mind. But when you turn toward healing understanding and forgiveness, those seeds begin to grow instead. Energy does not judge, it simply follows. This is why becoming conscious of your attention is the first step toward transforming your reality. You may not control every event in life, but you can always control how much energy you give it. The moment you stop fueling negativity with your awareness, it begins to lose power over you. The moment you stop revisiting old wounds in your mind, your energy begins to flow toward renewal. This is not denial, it is wisdom. You learn to choose where your life force should go, and that choice shapes your destiny. When you practice mindfulness, you begin to sense how attention carries energy. Even a small shift in focus can change your state completely. Try bringing attention to your breath for a few moments. The energy within you begins to settle. Focus on a painful memory and you can feel tension rise instantly. This is the evidence of the law in motion. You are not just thinking, you are transmitting. The direction of your thoughts directs the movement of life energy itself. In time, you start to see how every outcome begins with focus. Peace does not come from outside circumstances. It arises from where you place your awareness. Growth is not random. It follows the path your energy has been flowing in. The more you understand this, the more you begin to guard your attention as you would protect something sacred. Because it is sacred. It is your creative force. When energy and attention align, life becomes simpler and more powerful. Actions become clear and decisions feel lighter. You stop fighting against your own current and begin moving with it. You realize that what you nurture through your focus grows. Relationships, dreams, or inner peace. Energy follows attention, attention follows intention. And intention is the beginning of every transformation that has ever existed. In the stillness between an event and our response lies a space. A sacred moment where clarity, wisdom, and understanding are born. But most people never dwell there. They rush to fill that silence with reaction, emotion, defense, or resistance. The mind, conditioned by habit and ego, wants to immediately respond, to protect itself, to justify, to assert. Yet in doing so, we lose the opportunity to see. True understanding is not born in the noise of reaction, but in the quiet observation of what truly is. When something happens to us, an insult, a setback, a loss, the untrained mind immediately constructs a narrative. It says, "This is bad. This is unfair. This shouldn't happen." And in that instant, the emotion takes over. Anger, frustration, disappointment, they rise like a storm, clouding the inner vision. But the moment we react, we become prisoners of that storm. The situation no longer controls us. Our reaction does. Reaction is a reflex, understanding is a discipline. The practice of non-reaction is not suppression. It's not about pretending not to feel. It's about creating space within yourself, enough space to allow the emotion to arise, to exist, and to pass through without commanding your every action. The Shaolin Way teaches that every energy, even anger or sadness, is not the enemy. It's only energy, raw, unshaped, neutral. What gives it power is how we use it. If you react, that energy controls you. If you understand, you control it. To understand rather than react means to see the source of what is happening, not just its surface. When someone speaks harshly to you, don't only hear the words. Hear the pain, the fear, the misunderstanding behind them. When life throws an obstacle in your path, don't only see the inconvenience. Look for the lesson, the adjustment it demands from you. Everything is communication, and most of the world is reacting to noise instead of listening to meaning. The path of understanding is the path of mastery. A warrior who understands does not fight every battle. A monk who understands does not argue with ignorance. A mind that understands no longer burns energy on proving, defending, or attacking. Instead, it observes, absorbs, and adapts. This is not weakness. It is the ultimate strength, the kind that cannot be disturbed because it flows with awareness rather than resistance. When we learn to understand, we begin to recognize that every reaction is a choice. No one can make you angry. You choose anger. No one can make you sad. You allow sadness to stay. The moment we accept this responsibility, we take back the power that reaction steals from us. Emotional mastery begins not by controlling others or external situations, but by mastering the inner mechanisms of response. Understanding requires presence. Reaction thrives on impulse, but understanding grows in awareness. To understand, you must slow down the speed of your own mind. Watch the thought as it rises. Feel the emotion as it moves. Notice how it wants to pull you, to make you speak, to make you act. Then breathe. Observe. Ask, what is really happening here? In that moment, you are no longer controlled by the event. You are witnessing it. The power of understanding also lies in compassion. When you understand, you stop labeling others as good or bad, right or wrong. You see that everyone is acting from their own level of awareness, their own wounds, their own conditioning. The angry person is not evil, they are in pain. The liar is not powerful, they are afraid. The arrogant are not strong, they are empty. When you understand this, your reaction softens into wisdom. You respond not to the behavior, but to the truth behind it. To understand rather than react is to live with awareness instead of habit. Most people are repeating the same emotional patterns daily, triggered by the same words, the same tones, the same fears. The same buttons are pressed and the same reactions unfold. They think they are living freely, but they are only reliving the past through unconscious repetition. The moment you begin to understand, you interrupt this cycle. You break the pattern and open space for something new. Understanding transforms energy. Reaction burns it. When you react, your energy scatters in anger, stress, and conflict. When you understand, your energy gathers, it becomes centered, calm, and clear. This inner stillness is not passivity, it is readiness. From understanding, you can act, but your action comes from wisdom, not impulse. It becomes effective, deliberate, and peaceful. Every encounter, every challenge, every moment of discomfort is an opportunity to practice understanding. When someone tests your patience, when life challenges your plans, when uncertainty shakes your confidence, remember, it is not what happens that shapes your experience, but how you choose to meet it. Understanding is that choice. It is the pause before the storm, the breath before the word, the awareness before the action. To understand is to see beyond appearances. Reaction stops at the surface, but understanding dives into depth. The world is full of noise, opinions, and judgments, but the wise learn to listen between the lines. They learn to see the invisible threads connecting events, the unseen forces shaping outcomes. When you understand, you no longer see life as happening to you, but through you. Understanding is not found in books or teachings alone, it is cultivated through awareness in every moment. When you sit in silence, when you listen without replying, when you observe without needing to fix, you are training your inner discipline. Each time you choose understanding over reaction, you strengthen your inner foundation. And in time, that foundation becomes unshakable. So when life tests you, when emotions rise, when people provoke you, remember that you always have two paths, the path of reaction or the path of understanding. One leads to chaos, the other to clarity. One drains your energy, the other refines it. One keeps you bound to the external, the other connects you to the eternal. The mind that understands no longer fights with life. It learns to flow with it, to move with it, to see through it. And in doing so, it finds peace not because the world becomes quiet, but because it no longer needs to react to its noise. There is a quiet kind of power that emerges when one learns to detach, not from life itself, but from the illusions that chain the mind. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many think it means coldness, indifference, or lack of care. But in truth, detachment is clarity. It is the ability to see without distortion, to act without desperation, and to love without losing oneself. It is strength because it frees a person from the constant push and pull of desire and fear. Every attachment is a thread that ties your peace to something temporary. People, outcomes, recognition, and possessions, they all come and go. When your identity and emotional balance depend on them, your inner state becomes fragile. You rise when things go your way and fall when they don't. This is not freedom. This is dependence disguised as love, passion, or ambition. The moment your happiness relies on external validation, you have surrendered your power to something outside of you. Detachment, on the other hand, restores that power back to where it belongs, within. The strength of detachment is not built overnight. It begins when one starts to observe life instead of constantly trying to control it. The more you cling, the more you suffer. The mind that cannot let go is constantly at war with reality. It resists change, fears loss, and chases permanence in a world where nothing is permanent. Detachment does not mean withdrawal from this world. It means full participation without being enslaved by the outcome. It allows you to walk through life with open hands, giving, receiving, experiencing, without grasping too tightly. The greatest warriors are not those who never feel, but those who feel deeply and yet remain unmoved by the storms of emotion. They understand that emotions are waves, powerful but transient. To be detached is to surf these waves instead of being drowned by them. This balance between feeling and freedom is what cultivates inner resilience. When one learns to stand still in the middle of chaos, to breathe when everything seems uncertain, to stay calm when others are losing control, that is true mastery. In detachment, clarity sharpens. You begin to see what truly matters. Many chase illusions, the illusion of control, the illusion of security, the illusion of importance. Detachment peels away these layers. It shows that what you were fighting for was never the thing itself, but the feeling you thought it would give you. The peace, the recognition, the love, all of these already exist within. The external object was only a mirror reflecting what was dormant inside. When you stop needing the mirror, you start to realize the light was yours all along. Every spiritual tradition, in its essence, points toward detachment as the key to liberation. When the Buddha left the palace, it was not a rejection of the world, but a deeper acceptance of its impermanence. When a monk renounces possessions, it is not to escape life, but to see it clearly, without filters. Detachment trains the mind to remain steady so that one can act from wisdom, not impulse. It is not passivity, it is precision. The detached mind chooses action consciously, not reactively. Attachment breeds fear, fear of loss, fear of change, fear of being without. Fear clouds judgment, and in that fog people make decisions that deepen their suffering. Detachment dissolves that fear because it removes the illusion that you can truly lose what is eternal. What can be lost was never really yours. It was only passing through your experience like a breath that enters and leaves. To hold on too tightly is to suffocate what was meant to flow. When you let go, you allow life to breathe again through you. True strength is quiet. It is the strength of one who can remain still in the face of provocation, who can love without attachment and walk away without hatred. The detached mind does not need to prove, chase, or possess. It simply is. It moves with grace, not from weakness, but from understanding. The world sees detachment as loss of passion, but it is the opposite. It is pure passion unchained from ego. It is fire that burns without consuming. When you begin to detach, you might feel empty. This emptiness is not a void to be feared. It is space being created. Space for awareness, peace, and clarity to return. The heart that was once cluttered with expectations begins to expand. You realize that detachment doesn't make you love less. It allows you to love more authentically. Because now you are no longer loving to gain something, but simply because love flows through you naturally. Detachment is also a discipline of the mind. The more one practices it, the more one realizes how noisy the mind has become with attachments. Thoughts about the past, worries about the future, comparisons, and cravings. Each one is a small chain. The process of detachment is the art of breaking these chains one by one. It requires awareness, patience, and courage. Courage to face the emptiness once the chains are gone, and awareness to not create new ones in their place. When you reach a state of detachment, your perception of the world transforms. You stop judging people and situations as good or bad, success or failure. You begin to see them simply as experiences, each carrying its own lesson, each necessary for your evolution. Detachment brings wisdom because it removes the emotional turbulence that blinds understanding. You start to respond to life, not react to it. In this state, your actions become effortless, your speech becomes measured, and your presence becomes peaceful. You no longer rush toward outcomes because you trust the rhythm of life. You begin to understand that everything has its time, and your role is not to force but to flow. Detachment aligns you with this natural order, allowing you to act powerfully, yet peacefully. The greatest battles are rarely fought with weapons, armies, or visible enemies. The most profound and transformative battles take place within, between awareness and the ego. Awareness is pure, silent, observing, unattached. The ego, on the other hand, is restless, hungry, and constantly seeking validation from the world. When awareness rises, the ego begins to fade. When ego dominates, awareness disappears beneath layers of illusion. This conflict defines the quality of our life, our peace, and our ability to see reality as it truly is. The ego feeds on separation. It needs to feel different, superior, or inferior, but always distinct. It thrives on comparison, and in doing so, it keeps us locked in a cycle of judgment. Every time you say, "I am better," or "I am worse," the ego smiles. It doesn't matter which side of the comparison you fall on, both are food for it. Awareness, however, sees through this illusion. It knows that comparison is meaningless because all forms of life are expressions of the same universal energy. The tree, the ocean, the mountain, and the human being are not in competition. They simply are. Awareness allows you to see yourself without distortion. The ego wants to be seen, but never understood. It wants recognition, applause, control, and comfort. Awareness wants truth, even if that truth is uncomfortable. The ego resists the present moment because it cannot control it. Awareness surrenders to it completely. When you become aware of your own thoughts, emotions, and reactions, you begin to notice how many of them arise not from your true nature, but from the ego's need for protection. The ego says, I must defend my image. Awareness says, what image? Most people live unconsciously, directed by invisible strings pulled by their ego. They respond from wounds, not wisdom, from fear, not presence. When someone criticizes them, they react instantly. When someone praises them, they inflate with pride. These are both movements of the ego. Awareness, however, simply observes. It sees criticism and praise as temporary waves passing over the same still ocean. It does not become smaller with one or larger with the other. This neutrality is not coldness. It is balance. The moment you begin to watch your mind, you are no longer fully identified with it. You step into the seat of the observer. You notice the ego's games, the subtle ways it creates stories, justifications, and dramas to preserve its sense of self. You begin to catch it in action when it seeks attention, when it fears being ignored, when it tries to prove something. Awareness does not judge these movements, it simply witnesses them. And through witnessing, transformation happens. What is observed deeply, without resistance, begins to dissolve. The ego thrives in noise. The constant chatter of the mind, the endless stream of opinions, labels, and interpretations. Awareness is born in silence. It does not need to speak to know, it does not need to win to feel worthy. The ego seeks to possess, awareness seeks to understand. The ego collects experiences like trophies, awareness experiences fully and lets go. When you live through awareness, life becomes lighter. You no longer carry the unnecessary weight of defending who you think you are. Ego creates suffering because it constantly resists what is. It says, this should not be happening, or I deserve more than this. Awareness, in contrast, flows with reality. It understands that everything arises and passes away. It accepts change as the nature of existence. The ego says, I want control. Awareness knows there is nothing to control, only to experience and learn from. This surrender does not make you passive. It makes you powerful in a quiet, steady way. You begin to act not out of fear or pride, but from clarity. The path of awareness is not about killing the ego. It is about seeing it clearly. The ego has a function. It allows you to navigate the world, to have preferences, to survive. But when it becomes your master, life turns into a constant struggle. Awareness brings harmony to this relationship. It lets the ego serve, not rule. When you are aware, you use the mind as a tool instead of being used by it. You no longer chase approval because you understand that worth cannot be given or taken. It simply exists within you. Every moment offers a chance to choose awareness over ego. When someone disrespects you, can you respond without reacting? When success arrives, can you celebrate without arrogance? When failure visits, can you accept it without despair? These are the tests of awareness. The ego makes everything personal. Awareness sees everything as part of a larger flow. In awareness, you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is this teaching me? True awareness has no pride in itself. It does not say, I am enlightened. The moment you think you are aware, the ego has already taken over that thought and made it its own badge. Awareness is humble because it recognizes that even the idea of it is temporary. It observes without owning. It acts without claiming. It gives without expecting. The ego calculates. Awareness trusts. The deeper your awareness grows, the more transparent life becomes. You begin to see through illusions that once appeared solid, the need for control, the chase for recognition, the fear of being misunderstood. You start noticing how often the ego seeks validation through suffering, how it clings to pain just to feel significant. Awareness instead invites stillness. It reminds you that peace does not come from being right, but from being real. When awareness dominates, you become light. The mind quiets. The heart softens. You no longer feel the urge to prove or defend anything. You observe life unfolding moment by moment, knowing that nothing is truly yours to possess and nothing can truly be lost. The more you release the ego's grip, the more energy flows through you freely, without distortion. Awareness brings freedom, not from life, but within life. In a world where every second is filled with the hum of distraction, the constant vibration of messages, notifications, and the unending rush of human movement, the idea of stillness has become foreign. The moment one sits in silence, an uneasiness begins to rise, a restlessness that comes from being conditioned to believe that movement equals progress and stillness equals stagnation. Yet the truth, hidden behind centuries of inner wisdom, reveals that stillness is not the absence of progress, it is the birthplace of true understanding. The one who can be still in a storm has already mastered the essence of control, because control does not come from dominating the world outside, but from mastering the landscape within. To choose stillness over noise is to choose awareness over reaction. Most people spend their lives reacting to situations, to words, to the opinions of others, to fears that were never theirs. They mistake movement for meaning, thinking that constant engagement will lead to fulfillment. But just as muddy water only clears when it stands still, the mind too requires stillness to reveal its depth. When we slow down, not just physically but mentally, we begin to notice the subtle vibrations of existence. The breath, the heartbeat, the energy that flows through and around everything. This awareness is the first step towards seeing life as it is, not as we imagine it to be. Noise has many forms. It is not only the external chaos of the world, cars, crowds, conversations, but also the internal noise of thought. The mind, left untamed, becomes a restless machine that never stops spinning stories. It drags the past into the present and projects fears into the future, rarely allowing us to experience the purity of now. The noise says, you should be somewhere else. You should be doing something else. You should be someone else. Stillness, however, says nothing. It simply is. It doesn't demand. It doesn't rush, and it doesn't compete. It invites you to observe, to breathe, and to be fully present. When you begin to practice stillness, the world may not understand. It may call you lazy, unproductive, or disconnected. But this misunderstanding comes from a world that confuses business with purpose. True purpose doesn't scream. It whispers in moments of silence. The greatest realizations, the deepest insights, and the most profound shifts in consciousness all arise from moments of stillness, not from the noise of doing, but from the quiet of being. When the noise fades, the truth begins to surface. Stillness is not achieved by running away from life, but by engaging with it differently. It's not about escaping responsibilities or isolating yourself from the world. It's about entering each moment fully without resistance. When you are still, you can listen, not just with your ears, but with your entire being. You can feel the energy behind words, sense the intention behind actions, and see beyond appearances. In stillness, perception sharpens and clarity emerges naturally. You begin to realize that many of the battles you fight are illusions created by your own noisy mind. Every thought you entertain is a vibration. Some thoughts lift you, others drain you. When the mind is noisy, you become a magnet for confusion, frustration, and exhaustion. But when the mind becomes still, energy reorganizes itself. You can see solutions where before there were only problems. You can feel peace even in chaos. This is why ancient masters taught that the true warrior is calm, not aggressive. Stillness is not weakness, it is the highest form of strength. It takes far more power to remain unmoved in turbulence than to react impulsively to every disturbance. The practice of stillness begins with awareness of breath. The breath is the bridge between body and mind, between the seen and unseen. When you bring attention to the rhythm of your breathing, you begin to anchor yourself in the present. You start to notice the gaps, the quiet pauses between inhalation and exhalation. Those spaces are sacred. They are doorways into the stillness that exists beneath the surface of constant thought. As you become more attuned to them, you realize that stillness is not something you must create. It's something you must return to. It has always been there, waiting beneath the noise. Choosing stillness also means facing what you've been avoiding. The moment external distractions fade, the inner noise becomes louder. Old emotions, buried fears, unresolved memories, all begin to rise to the surface. This is why many avoid silence. It confronts them with themselves. Yet this confrontation is necessary. Without it, there can be no healing. Stillness allows you to observe your inner landscape without judgment, to witness the storms within until they calm on their own. The more you stay with it, the more you realize that even the most painful emotions lose their power when met with stillness instead of resistance. Over time, the space between your thoughts expands. The mind that once ruled you begins to serve you. You no longer chase validation in noise because you found contentment in quiet. The energy you once wasted on endless mental chatter becomes available for creation, for compassion, for understanding. You begin to see that silence is not empty. It is full of answers. Every sacred teaching, every moment of awakening, every transformation begins here, in the decision to be still amidst the noise of life. When you walk through the world in stillness, everything changes. The way you speak softens. The way you move becomes deliberate. You begin to notice the beauty in simple things. The sound of wind, the rhythm of footsteps, the light shifting across a room. Life stops feeling like something to conquer and starts feeling like something to experience. The mind becomes a clear mirror, reflecting reality as it is, not as it is distorted by noise. In this state, wisdom doesn't need to be sought. It naturally unfolds from within, like ripples spreading across a still pond,